The scanner blinked at me like a tired eye that had seen too much of the world. I pressed my Amex Platinum to the reader again. Nothing. The agent's smile curled into something professional and unhelpful. "I'm sorry, sir. Your access isn't valid today." "On a Tuesday?" I tried to joke. "I'm 68, not a college kid sneaking into a frat party." She checked the screen again, tapped keys as if the keyboard had wronged her. "It looks like the account was downgraded to green last month." I laughed. A short, empty sound. "I pay the annual fee in March." I did what I always do. Coffee at my kitchen table, reading glasses, online bill pay. Green? No, this is a mistake. Behind me, someone sighed in the patient way travelers do. I stepped aside. The scent of cinnamon rolls drifted out from the lounge like a memory from a life when my wife, Ruth, was still alive, and we ate pastry with our fingers, not worrying about sugar. For years, gone this October. The pastry is just a smell now. "I'll call the bank," I said, and the agent nodded with the sympathy reserved for lost luggage and dying pets. I sat on a molded plastic chair by gate 17A, set my black Samsonite by my shoes, and pulled out the phone I refused to upgrade because it holds Ruth's last voicemail like a delicate egg. My layover was 70 minutes. I had time to untangle the mess. The bank's hold music was brave but doomed. The fluorescent lights hummed. Across from me, a teenager ate a breakfast burrito with a commitment I admired. "Sir," the rep finally said, bright and far away, "I'm seeing a product change from platinum to green on May 3rd at 2:11 p.m. Eastern. It was authenticated via two-factor code sent to your daughter's number ending in 48. The burrito kid took another victorious bite. I felt something very old in me go still. "To my daughter's number," I repeated. "Yes, sir. She's an authorized user." Authorized. The words scraped my tongue. I heard myself say thank you, heard myself hang up, heard nothing for a full minute but the sound of other people going places. The board above gate 17 beflicked to on time. A plane coughed awake outside. The world was moving, and I was rooted. They call it a paper cut to the soul. A little slice, and suddenly the page is read. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. It had begun modestly. That was the trap. Winter 2 years ago, my daughter Nora called at 9:42 p.m., voice bright and urgent, the way she sounded when she was 7, and had something to confess. "Dad, we have to get Jonah to a clinic. He can't breathe. Can I use your card for Uber?" "Of course," I said. "What else is money for?" By midnight, the boy was fine, a false alarm and a steroid inhaler. I told her to leave my card on the hall table. I didn't check for it until a week later when the pharmacy called about a declined copay that wasn't mine. Nora came by with store-bought muffins that shed little yellow crumbs all over my oak table. "Dad, you always made money seem easy." "I'm not used to," she shrugged. "We're fine." She wasn't fine. The young don't know how not fine sounds. It's particular music. The dishwasher thudding at 1:00 a.m. The smell of panic in laundry detergent. Her husband, Evan, worked at a startup that called itself a family. Family is a dangerous word when it has no legal obligations. So I added her as authorized user to one card, a low limit, just in case. Nora made tea in my kitchen that day with my kettle that squeals like an offended bird at exactly 203 degrees, and we talked about nothing important. Jonah's preschool teacher, the new deli on Terrell Avenue, her neighbor's dog that barked in fluent German. "What about Miles?" she asked, as if the thought had just wandered through. "Can I ever use them?" "If there's an emergency." "Emergency," I said, rolling the word around my mouth like a candy to see if I liked the flavor. "In an emergency, sure." I told her my login. She wrote it on a sticky note with a tiny cat face at the corner. One day turned into habit. Habit turned into pattern. Pattern turned into the kind of story you only recognize when you're reading it backwards. Back at my house on Bell Street that evening, I made dinner for one the way I always do. A skillet, olive oil a little too expensive, broccoli that crackles if you drop it just right, a single chicken thigh, salt that tastes like a coastline. I laid everything on the plate Ruth bought at a yard sale in '82 and thought about how she had forgiven me for refusing to buy china. Steel is china, I'd said. Real life is eating standing up. She'd smile because that was her way of winning without a fight. I pushed aside the plate, opened my laptop 2017, keys with the shine worn off the ones that spell our last name, and signed into my airline account. Two-factor code sent to a phone I still pay for because of a granddaughter named May who sometimes FaceTimes me to show me her art projects. Available miles, 46,780. I sat there with my fork in the air. Last fall, I had 1,340,000. For decades of business travel and a stubborn loyalty to a single dreadful airline had built a pile of numbers that almost felt like money. Actually, better than money. Money you can spend by accident. Miles demand intention. I clicked into account activity. There were lines in clean corporate font, guiltless. February 14th. Transfer to partner hotel. 480,000 points, Hilton Honors. February 14th. Partner booking. Conrad Maldives Ringali Island, 6 nights, water villa. 03/21. Airline partner redemption. 2x first class JFK. Doik Tamale, swipe plus 380 apartments. 340,000 miles plus $1,162.90 taxes/fees. 03/21. Seat selection premium. $480. March 22nd. Lounge guest access. $118. 04/02. E-gift cards, premium travel services. $2,000. Statement credit pending. The cursor blinked like a metronome for a sad song. I scrolled. There were smaller thieves. $248 here for Breeze Park Valet. $89 for quiet sleep pods. $39 for priority shower. There was the big thief. 520,000 miles transferred to a thin air of partner accounts with friendly names and no faces. I poured myself water into a clean glass with the care of a man handling nitroglycerin. Then I called the airline. The agent, Maria, had a voice that could talk you through a hurricane. I told her the short of it. The facts without the weather. Sir, she said after verification, I can see that the transfer to Hilton was initiated from your device fingerprint last used on. She paused to read. On an iPad in Bethesda, Maryland. I live in Columbus, Ohio. Do you have family in Bethesda? My daughter. I see note. Cardholder confirmed family pool. I stopped. I had, in a way, the sticky note with the cat. The emergency. The way convenience feels like kindness until it's something else. Sir, she said gently, we can flag your account for fraud activity, lock transfers, and reset two-factor to your number only. But the miles used for completed travel. She paused. She knew this would feel like the cop who knows your car is already in Bolivia. Those can't be recovered unless the partner cancels the ticket. Did they travel yet? I heard keys. Departure March 21st. Return March 31st. They traveled. Of course they traveled. Of course they smiled under someone else's champagne. Can you tell me names? I'm not authorized to disclose passenger names due to privacy policies. Whose privacy, I asked, is being protected exactly? Silence, professional and kind. She couldn't answer that. The answer was obvious. Not mine. I wrote it all down anyway. Dates, times, confirmation codes. QD7N4Z, HN2L0P. The air smelled like dish soap and something slightly burned. The broccoli, I had forgotten the skillet. On a separate tab, I opened my bank. Amex, product change. Chase, transfer to premium travel services for $2,000. Capital One, support family travel. Note on an account I didn't remember adding. My hands went very steady. There's a steadiness that comes to some men when something in them has snapped and rearranged into a useful shape. I pulled the old brother printer from under the desk, snapped in paper, and printed as if the noise itself could chew through lies. On May 9th at 6:05 p.m., I stood by gate 29 where flight 417 boards to LaGuardia and saw them before they saw me. Nora has my wife's cheekbones and my mother's ankles strong and sure. Evan had his jaw set in the way of a man who has already decided that logic is an attack. They were laughing over something on his phone. A video, bright, with water and white roofs. Maldives water isn't blue. It's a clause in a prenup. Nora, I said, because I am a polite man. How was your trip? If the airport were a stage, it was excellent theater. She turned slowly, smile still there, then sliding away like a violated sticker. Dad, she said, as if we were in a grocery store aisle choosing tomatoes. We were going to call you. From the airplane? I looked at Evan. He stared back, calculating how much of this was public and whether I'd have the stamina for scandal. Jonah loved staying with my sister, Nora said quickly, a rearranging of furniture to block a draft. We thought. I saw the booking, I said. First class. Water villa. Swipe. The lounge shower must have been very nice. I don't raise my voice. I learned long ago that people hear better when you whisper near the truth. Dad, Evan said, finding his register. Reasonable managerial. We're family. We assume this is what you wanted your points for. Experiences. Memories for your grandson. Jonah didn't go, I said. The booking was 2 adults. He's 4, Nora said, almost laughing. He wouldn't appreciate it. A couple at the window pretended not to listen, their eyes warm with the sick interest of people who can go home and tell a story about strangers. You downgraded my card, I said to Green. Evan coughed out a little sound. The fee was unnecessary. We thought, why pay $695 when? I asked. When we can travel on points, he finished, and offered me a smile that invited me to admire his thrift. You love to say we, I said. It's funny how you use it for victories. The boarding agent called Group A in a voice that could cut cloth. Nora looked toward the gate, then back at me, calculating which loss would cost more. This conversation, or a seat they didn't need to be in yet. Dad, she said, soft and now intimate. It's not like we took your pension. Points are not real money. I could smell cinnamon again from the lounge I hadn't entered that morning. Watch me make them real. They blinked. I took my phone out of my pocket, tapped the screen, and the recording light glowed red because I'm old, but not opaque. Nora, I said quietly, do you consent to a recorded conversation about unauthorized access to my accounts? Her mouth fell open. You're not serious. I am, I said. I am exactly as serious as a court summons and a freeze on every card you've ever felt entitled to use. Group A means nothing to me. I'm group legal now. Evan's jaw clenched. We're boarding, he said. You're not, I said, and stepped aside and let them. Sometimes you have to let a play finish its act to get to the scene where the set collapses. The next morning, I wore my wedding suit to the lawyer's office. It still fit, which is how grief sits on some men. It chews away what cake would have built. My attorney, Ms. Patel, had a pen that wrote like it meant it and a manner that made me want to behave. Identity theft, she said, tapping each page. Unauthorized account access. Fraud by family members is still fraud. We'll file a police report. We'll file civil claims. You'll be told you're ruining the family. You're not. You're telling it the truth. The office smelled faintly of lemon. There were children's drawings taped behind her desk, crayon attempts at the concept of a house. You won't get miles back, she added without mercy, because mercy has to wait until you sign things. But you will get the money represented by their value for most Udesta courts. Your airline's own valuation plus the cash charges. Will itemize. She loved itemizing. I did too, suddenly. Itemizing is an honest man's revenge. Here, she said, sliding form across the desk. A request for account statements and device logs. And here, a court date request. I signed with a fountain pen Ruth gave me in '79 when we were young enough to be impractical. The ink bloomed like a small bruise. At home, in my kitchen that was clean because my loneliness is tidy, I made lists on yellow legal paper in my cramped engineer's hand. March 21st, JFK, DOH, ML, 340,000 miles, $1,162.90 taxes/fees. Seat fees, $480. Hotel, 480,000 points. E-gift cards, $2,000. Transfers, 520,000 miles. Product change fee reversal, $0. I called the police. Officer Green sounded 20 and careful. It's hard one's family, he said, and I almost laughed. Hard, I repeated, is a full refrigerator of food you don't feel like eating. We set a time for him to come by and take the report. At 3:11 p.m. my phone rang with Nora's name on the screen. I let it move into voicemail, then listened on speaker as I wrote. You're overreacting, Dad. Points are for family. We can sort this out like adults. Call me back so we can fix it without making it ugly. The word ugly hung like a fruit fly over a bowl of peaches I'd bought optimistically. I printed that voicemail too. Technology makes cowards eloquent. By tacit agreement, I went to their house on Sunday. The smell of lemon cleaner and candle wax. The entry table with a bowl for keys that had never learned my shape. Jonah's shoes in a row, like a short parade. Dad. Nora began immediately in the kitchen. The dishwasher thrummed. The counter held a bowl of lemons purely for the idea of lemons. Her face had the set expression of a girl about to cry to get out of a ticket. Evan stood with his arms crossed, which men believe is armor. We should handle this privately, he said. You handle my accounts privately, I said. Now we're public. Public? Nora's voice wobbled. You mean court, I said, and put an envelope on the counter the way a magician puts down the card you'd picked without knowing. I requested a date for a civil suit and filed a police report. A copy of both. You'll get served formally within the week. Evan reached for the envelope in that confidential way men reach for things that might be their own. I didn't stop him. He read, eyes flicking. Dad, Nora said, as if we had drifted from the main subject. You gave me your password. You told me it was for family. In an emergency, I said. A child who can't breathe. Not a water villa that does. We needed this, she insisted. And I could hear Ruth's voice in my head saying gently, she's convinced need and want are synonyms. You booked first class, I said. You downgraded my card. You transferred 520,000 miles to partner accounts. You bought gift cards. You did it because you didn't think I would notice, and you did it because you thought I was too lonely to risk losing you. Nora flushed. The dishwasher groaned, then settled into a softer rhythm, like someone who had been crying and was trying to stop. I brought lasagna, I said, absurdly because I had. I set the Pyrex on the counter next to the lemons, ridiculous and hot. Dad, Nora whispered, please, we're drowning. I saw then it wasn't only entitlement. It was arithmetic, their mortgage payment, the silent shame in the stainless steel fridge, the way Evan's voice got louder when he was scared. I felt my anger shift into a different weather system, still violent, but with thunder I recognized. Then, I said gently, you should have asked for help. We did, Evan said. We asked the universe. The universe, I said, doesn't have my password. She cried then, her face crumpling in the way a child's face does when a balloon pops. I let her. I poured water for us, both from their filtered tap that tasted like nothing. And after she cried, I pressed play on my phone and recorded her saying, I used your points without permission. She said it, quietly, but she said it. Then I left, and the lasagna stayed on the counter like a bad joke. And I went home and put my suit back in the closet, and slept in a bed too big for a single body. The courthouse smelled like dust and burnt coffee. Families don't look like families in court. They look like strangers sharing a bench. Nora wore a gray dress that might have been a uniform. Evan wore a suit that tried too hard. I wore the wedding suit again because there are not many occasions left for it. The clerk called our case with the unsentimental music of bureaucracy Franklin's. Walsh. That's my name. That's theirs. Ms. Patel spoke first, steady and concise, the kind of voice that would tell you that, yes, the ship is sinking, but this is the right lifeboat. She slid into evidence a stack of printouts with tabs. Blue for airline, yellow for bank, pink for merchant logs. She played the voicemail. She played the kitchen confession. She called a witness from the airline via Zoom, a woman with a headset and the patience of a saint. Can you confirm, Ms. Patel asked, that on February 14th and March 21st, the following redemptions occurred from account ending in 2217? I can, the woman said, and read my list back to me like an incantation. Can you confirm the device used? An iPad associated with email walsh.nora at a common provider. Thank you. Evan tried something then. A lawyerly flourish he'd found on the internet. Points are not money, he said. They're rewards. They have no cash value. The judge, a woman maybe my age, or maybe everyone looks my age to me now, peered over her glasses. And yet, she said, you used them to buy something that cost money. He floundered. We believed we had permission. Ms. Patel clicked. The kitchen recording played again, Nora's voice. I used your points without permission. There are sentences you don't get to take back. The judge asked questions that were small knives. Who downgraded the card? Who changed the two-factor? Who authorized gift cards? Evan's answers got quieter than jagged. Nora's hands twisted in her lap. She's always hated silence you can't fill. When it was my turn, I stood. My knees did not complain. Grief strengthens some muscles. Your Honor, I said. I never wanted to stand here. I wanted to be the man who takes his family to the airport lounge and orders too much bread. But I'm also the man who knows how to read a statement. I worked 39 years for an aeronautics company, watching numbers become machines we trust with our bodies. My daughter believes I owe her the rewards of my life's friction. I owe her love. I do not owe her theft. We won. Not everything. You don't get everything. But enough. The judgment reflected the airline's valuation per mile. $18 per thousand. Plus the cash charges, plus legal fees. $15,480 for the miles. $1,162.90 taxes/fees. $480 seat selection. $2,000 gift cards. $3,200 in fees and costs. $22,322.90. An order to remove them from every account. A restraining order on two-factor changes. The kind of protection you hope you'll never need from people who once fell asleep with their fingers wrapped around yours. They looked small at the table, suddenly. Not villains, just people who had believed a story in which I was their ATM with feelings attached. In the hallway, Nora tried to touch my arm. Dad, she said, voice shredded. Please, we can fix this. Fix, I said, is a thing people do to engines and lies. You can repair a relationship, but not here, not today. We stood there, three quiet statues around a vending machine that offered Fritos and a kind of forgiveness made of corn. 2 months later, I woke at 6:10, like always. Brewed coffee in the Bialetti Ruth bought in Amsterdam because she liked the way Italians make mornings. I checked my accounts, locked, secure, numbers clean like fresh sheet. I ate toast with apricot jam and read the paper with the focus of a man who knows he will not be interrupted by the sound of someone else using his name. I had 46,780 miles left. You can do something with anything if you're willing to be unglamorous. I booked a ticket for a woman from church, Maria, 72, who hadn't seen her sister in El Paso in 11 years because the bus made her ankles swell. I handed her the printout in the vestibule. She cried into my sweater and left a little mascara smudge that looked like a musical note. I transferred hotel points, the ones the court couldn't convert, to a charity program that houses families while children are in cancer treatment. You can call that performative goodness if you want. I call it making the math move. I mailed a check to the court clerk on time, because victory tastes better when it's tidy. I changed my passwords to something only Ruth and I would get. The name of the ice cream place where we broke our first diet together and didn't care. Nora sent letters. I read them. People mix apology with blame like they're following a recipe their therapist gave. We didn't mean you always if you had the papers smelled like her childhood, though like glue and pencil shavings, and I put them in a file labeled later. Evan called once. We can appeal, he said like a man talking about weather. You can, I said, and the sky can also rain upwards. He did not call again. I took Jonah to the park on a Saturday the way I used to take his mother when swings didn't make my back wonder what I was thinking. He leaned on my knee and told me a story about a dragon that only ate broccoli, and I pretended to be shocked. He asked about airplanes. I told him they stay up because the numbers are right. He nodded like this was both obvious and miraculous. In September, a thick envelope arrived from a court. I slid it with the careful aggression of a letter opener that has only ever been used for electricity bills and holiday cards. Inside, confirmation of payment received from the defendants, stamped in blunt. A separate page. Order finalized. It smelled like toner and the end of chapter. I made dinner early that night. Leftover roast chicken reinvented as something better than honest, with lemon and garlic and a pan sauce that made the kitchen smell like I had company. I set one plate, one fork, one folded napkin. I put the envelope under the salt cellar where Ruth kept the good salt because she said life needs help. My phone blinked with a notification. I turned it face down. I turned off the little badges on all the apps that think they're emergencies. Sometimes justice looks like a red circle disappearing. I made tea in the blue mug that says world's okayest grandpa because I am, And I went to my desk and slid the court order into the folder with the neat tab. Family legal. There's a folder labeled family. Photos right next to it. They belong together. That's the truth. I sat by the window as it got dark, the way I always do, and watched the plane lights slide across the sky in slow confessions. There were 2 tickets in my drawer to visit Ruth's sister in Sarasota in November, paid with what remains of a life that still has direction. I'll bring flowers to Ruth Stone on the way to the airport. I'll tell her the numbers finally listened. They booked first class with my points. I booked a date with the truth, and it kept the plane in the air.